next generation is better than the previous generation.
Now, Sean, talking about having many children, we were told in those days, I don't know if it still holds sway, that farmers will have a number of children because they believe that those children are going to help them in the farm. So how are you going to preach to a farmer in the interior of Osun State, for instance, not to have, and he's going to be praying for more male children who are going to help him out in the farm. So how are you going to preach to him to cut down the number of children he's going to produce? How is he going to get labor for his farm? You'll have to explain that to him, won't you?
Thank you very much for that good example. And true, that has worked in years past. And it worked, truly. You had a large family, that means you had the potential to be rich because they are going to work for you. But today, we have many examples to learn from in the US and in other industrialized economies where agriculture is one of their mainstay. They don't need so many people. The number of farmers in America is less than 1% of the population. Yet they produce more than enough, and even for export. So beyond education is also empowerment. If the farmers know that, oh, they have tools, basic tools that can do many of the manual jobs they do, that can give them a lot of respite, and they know that, yes, they can still produce what they have to without having to use procreation to achieve it.
Are you implying that there's no advantage to a larger population?
There is, as I've said earlier, it's supposed to be a blessing. It's supposed to be. But it's like a keg of gunpowder if you don't manage it properly. So back to the case of the farmer. If we have more population, again, back to our urban centers, Lagos happens to be, even after Lagos has, the capital has moved after Lagos. Lagos continues to hold a lot of sway in terms of holding a lot more population. There needs to be specific policies that will establish other urban centers in different regions of the nation so that it's not just in one location. And so I believe that our nation is able to sustain a larger population, yes, with proper planning, with proper engagement and education. But the problem
is... There's a condition there, isn't there?
Yes, yes.
With proper planning.
And we have not done well with planning in the past, unfortunately. So we have not. Look at our power infrastructure. How many people is it supposed to serve? For example, look at the Lekki-Epe Expressway, one straight road. How many people is it supposed to serve? How many people live in that axis right now? So we have not done well as a government to look at our forecast, what the Population Commission is doing, and interpret that into policies that these are things that need to be in place before this number of children arrive. So projections, if we continue the way we are going, then we're actually creating more problems. And, the example of spending 1 naira to gain 20 naira from the individual later. If I don't spend that 1 naira, it is not zero that I get. I actually have to go and borrow to deal with Boko Haram, borrow to deal with Niger Delta, borrow to deal with security and other issues from people that were not properly brought up and become a toxic element within the system. So it's a choice we have to make at this point. Do we see? So it's not a favor what government is doing to develop human capital. No, it is a lifeline for holding the nation together.
So where we are now, yeah. If we say, okay, solutions, do we need to step back? Because initially, 1 naira wasn't spent for that one individual. So now we're having to borrow 1 naira to take care of Boko Haram and all the other things.
More than 1 naira.
Okay, no, 1 naira for Boko Haram, 1 naira for Niger Delta, 1 naira for Northwest, 1 naira for Southwest, 1 naira for North Central. So, but the 1 naira we would have used for the one individual wasn't used that way. Where do we go from here? What do we do?
In my opinion, the foundation is, first, there are many multilateral issues that we have. So it ties back to many of the issues we have analyzed in terms of our nation, Nigeria. We need the right thinking leadership. So it's not about, this is not about politics. This is not about, this is what my party is doing and all of that. So this is about, this is what we need to do to sustain ourselves as a nation. So we first need the right mindset to have thinking that is wholesome, that is future leaning. And we have many examples to learn from. We have the example of Singapore. We have many nations that pulled out from abject poverty into first world or a prosperous nation. So we have no excuse. Our case is not so different that it cannot be done. But when we take away selfishness out of and the element of leadership, then we can truly begin to see. The other thing that Yomi mentioned earlier is around who is going to speak to the people. Right now, everybody's a government to himself. You provide your power, your water, and everything. So you just get by with the government. But
there is a national orientation agency. That was the question I was going to ask Mrs. Hundayi. So, I mean, okay, Commissioner, National Population Commission. How much campaign is going on about this? Because, I mean, there's no two ways of looking at this. We are in danger.
That's true. That's very true. And, I mean, I know that, and the Commission knows that. And like I said earlier on, that's part of the reasons we reviewed the national policy on population. It's the only policy that Mr. President signs. Every other policy a minister can sign or a governor. And right now we presented it before Mr. President, awaiting his signature. Once he signs, it can be implemented. I must say that everything we have discussed here, the policy takes care of it, because
how many children is that policy recommending?
We have not really recommended. Like I said, we've looked at what we are trying to do is looking at what he's talking about, incentives, but we are not calling it incentives. Okay. We're looking at voluntary family planning. We're trying to let people see the danger, because we believe that when you know what you're getting into, it's easier to convince you not to go into danger.
Do you see us getting to the point of China, for instance, where one child, full stop, no two ways about it?
You see, I want to say this first. That's
maybe not one child in our case, but I mean that kind of policy is what I'm talking about.
Well, I would want to say this. I even think at this stage, it's not the